Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait a few moments and we're going to get started on a really informative Facebook Live today. And I think everybody, immigrants, citizens, are going to take away a lot of knowledge that they should learn about. So I look forward to bringing on my guest here shortly. So in just a couple more seconds, we'll get started with our program. All right. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's June 3rd. We are halfway through the year almost of 2021. And we are continuing to bring you Facebook Live most Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. And we want to continue to educate you all. And so today we're not really talking primarily about immigration or personal injury or car accidents. We're going to talk about family law with a very special guest and a trusted colleague in our community. But before we get there, I'm going to go through some quick updates on immigration and then introduce our wonderful guest who's going to explain to us the importance of family law, marital settlement agreements, child support, and everything else you need to know when, with the divorce rates they are, everybody needs to have some of this information handy. So really quick, USCIS has announced as of May 21st, 2021, they have basically redesignated temporary protected status for Haiti. This is huge news. It's probably going to make 100,000 plus more people eligible for relief. And as in Florida, we have one of the largest Haitian populations who are now going to be eligible for continued protection from deportation and removal and also work authorization. Another good news, which just came out yesterday, USCIS said that they're going to pilot the credit card form for green card application adjustment of status 485. So normally a lot of our clients have to come up with $1,225 cashier's check in order to pay for this. But it looks like USCIS is running a pilot program to accept credit cards for this. So that's good for a lot of people when money is tight. Maybe you can use some credit to get through your immigration process and not put that on hold. All right. So remember, I'm going to ask again to follow us on social media if you can. We did just do our very first TikTok yesterday. I'm not sure if anybody saw that, but I will not be on there a lot, but I do ask that you guys support my team and their TikToks and give us some feedback. All right. So I'm going to quickly introduce our guest. Our guest is a local attorney, Ms. Rania Arwani. She graduated from Barry University. She was a certified legal intern in the Children and Families Clinic, and where it allowed her to help families and actual clients while being a law student. I was also part of the immigration clinic at Barry University, and that's kind of where I fell in love with my line of work, and probably where Ms. Arwani fell in love with her line of work. And in addition to that, I mean, these are some huge accomplishments. She also had her very own TED Talk. And I'm sure if you check out her website and her email here, that you'll be able to check that out. And she has also just published a book. So we have an author, entrepreneur, business owner, and founder of Arwani Law. So everybody, please help me welcome Ms. Rania Arwani. Hey, Rania, how are you?
Good. How are you, Nayef? Thank you for wonderful introduction.
I try to keep it brief, but if you have such wonderful qualifications, we definitely want to make sure we hit some important ones. And I know you're also a mother and a family woman, and so how are you juggling everything? How are you doing?
By grace of God.
Okay, so
it is what it is. I wake up really early. My kids are not. They're older right now. They're like teenagers, so it's not that difficult anymore. I actually go to I arrive at the office every single day around 5:30 or 6, because
Wow.
I need like 2 hours just for myself before it turns into a beehive.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I feel. Those couple hours alone is when you get 90% of your work done in a day. So tell us, when did you establish the Arwani law firm, and where are you located?
So I'm located downtown Orlando, and I established the firm back in 2015.
Okay. So that was a year before I opened Mubarak Law. And so I'm glad to see that you're doing well and you're growing and making all these wonderful accomplishments. So we get, probably a couple dozen calls a month about family law. And for family law, it can range from divorces to child custody to prenups and postnups. So I'm hoping that you can give our audience some basic background today. And when I think it's appropriate, I might ask some immigration specific questions and see what we can do from there. So first and foremost, why don't you tell us divorces in Florida? How does it work? How does it start? And we'll start from there.
Okay, so a divorce in Florida starts by filing a petition for dissolution of marriage. That is how it's initiated. So I mean, you're asking, yeah, that when petition is filed, that is when it's initiated. That's how it happens.
Okay, and then typically, does somebody have an opportunity? Like any lawsuit, somebody has the opportunity to respond. And
yes, so if you're talking about the process of the divorce is once someone filed for the dissolution, there has to be a service of process. So the other party will get served personally, and then at that point they have 20 days to respond. After the 20 days, then you have to, at that point, exchange certain documents, financial affidavit, and other mandatory disclosure, which includes like bank accounts, tax returns, and what have you. So you can start the process of figuring out how to divide the assets and the liabilities, and figure out how to move forward. And
so we get asked a lot about family law. Hey, I want to file before my wife, or I want to file before my husband. I don't want the judge to think it's my fault. Can you explain what no-fault divorce means, or does it matter if somebody files first or doesn't? I can't tell you how many times I've received this question.
We get it a lot too. And it does not matter. It's no fault. The judges don't care. They don't want to hear it. If someone cheated on someone, if someone lived with someone for a year and a half, they don't want to know. They don't care. And even if you try to let the judges know, hey, by the way, let me tell you how horrible this person is. Yeah, you're wasting the judge's time, and they're just like, come on, you're wasting my time.
Okay, and another thing I think I want to jump into, which might open a couple more other questions, is a lot of times the clients will say, I don't want to get divorced. My wife is going to take 50% of what I own, and they've been married for 6 months. I just kind of want to start with a lot of myths and see, maybe we can educate everybody. Maybe some people do believe they're entitled and they're not really protecting their interest in the future. How does that work? Dividing assets, and then we'll go through alimony. So I'll let you start with that myth of the 50%.
That's a big myth. So when we talk about dividing the marital assets, what is a marital asset? It's an asset that was acquired during the marriage, acquired by income that was generated during the marriage. So let me give you an example. Someone owns a house, and the house is worth $200,000. They sell it 2 months after they get married, and they purchase another house. Does that make it marital asset? Part of it will be, but the most part will not, because this person put $200,000 of a separate asset into this new property. So no, not everything so when you get divorced, not everything that you own is divided in half. It is only what was acquired during the marriage and generated from income of the marriage. Now, there is something that's called appreciation. So let's say someone is married for 10 years. A housewife purchased tier 3 with marital income. Housewife purchased 10 years prior to them getting married. And then at 20 years later, or how many ever years later, they sell it, and the value of the house went from let's say $100,000 to $200,000. Even though it is a non-marital asset, the actual payment of the mortgage is coming from marital income. So there is a portion of the house that is going to be marital, and that is what we call, we appreciate the increase of the value of the house, and we figure out the portion that is marital.
And is that calculation done like to the month, to the T of the years, to see how much somebody has contributed?
Exactly. So you figure out exactly how many mortgage payments were made, what portion of the mortgage payment went towards interest, what part of the mortgage payment went towards the principal. It's a very intense calculation to figure out exactly what is the portion that is marital.
I have to say, as a practicing immigration, a lot of times things aren't fair or just. I do love the family law rules. I feel like they're very reasonable. They're very fair in a lot of ways, and I know that there's a lot of times people get screwed over or being not supported by their spouses. But I think that there's a lot of things that people can do to protect themselves beforehand. So before we were talking about the divorce process and splitting marital assets, what is something somebody can do before the marriage to protect their interests, either their assets or their support for the future?
So one thing I advocate for, and I tell everyone I know, prenups, postnups. Do it. There is nothing that you're going to lose by entering into a prenup or a postnup. You are agreeing on what portions of your assets how they're going to be divided, who's going to get what. Because in the future, if this is not agreed to prior, then it's going to be a very expensive litigation, and you might end up with what you could have agreed to or more back then. So at this point, I think people who don't enter into a prenup are doing a big mistake, or a postnup.
And now, I was born in the U.S., but I'm Palestinian heritage, and you are of Syrian heritage, but born in Dubai and raised there, and came here shortly after high school. A lot of times, these cultural differences really can hurt somebody by not entering a prenup because yani aib or something. It's looked down upon. People don't want to hear that. And so how can we convince, members of our community the importance of these documents? And I guess maybe we have to show them some extreme examples of how they could have been protected if this was done.
So think of it this way. From my limited knowledge of how things work in the Middle East, when the wife gets divorced and she has children, what does the husband do? He gets them a residence. He gets them a house. He's responsible to, take care of the family, even though they are divorced. Correct?
Right.
Yeah. That is how it's done. Here, it's not that way. What happens here is that if you get divorced, you either get alimony or you do not. And alimony we'll talk about alimony in a second, but there is no support unless there is alimony. But there is child support. Child support is, it is what it is, but it will not open a house. It will not guarantee all of your, bills are going to be paid. There is no way. Well, very, limited, circumstances that someone can live off of, child support, but it's usually not going to happen.
Okay.
So entering into a prenup, going back to what you were asking, entering into a prenup, you can enter into a prenup and agree that whatever the laws in Egypt, in Dubai, in Syria are, and what your rights would have been had you been living there, we're going to go by these laws. That's it, right? If you don't,
it's actually a contract, right? And you agree to the terms, you can set rules up, and I think it's an important and healthy part of a conversation any couple should have before entering into a marriage.
Yeah.
Especially when children become involved down the road, these are all things you need to think about.
Talking about kids, Nayef, you can't agree on anything to do with the kids. So that is something that even if you do and put it on paper and sign it and notarize it and have witnesses, the court will look at it, strike it out, doesn't matter. That's something that is not allowed.
What determines the outcome of a divorce with children involved?
So in Florida, we go by what is in the best interest of the child or the children. So that is the burden. What is the burden? Proving that whatever the outcome is in the best interest of the child. And we go by various prongs. There are like 22 different prongs that we have to address. And let me just, list the most important ones. The most important one that the judges look at is if a parent is trying to encourage a relationship between the other parent and the children. Because, you see it all the time. I'm not going to give him the kids because he hung up on me. I'm not going to give him the kids because she did not return my call. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So if that happens during the divorce, and you bring that up, it's going to be taken against that parent. It's going to be really bad.
Do the courts try to give 50-50 custody to parents? What's the starting point usually, or where does the court start before they start assessing how much time each parent should have?
So there is a misconception that we go by 50-50. We do not. But men and women are equal. Mom and dad are equal. You show up to court, the court are going to look at both mom and dad as equal, great, loving parents. Now it's, upon the parents to prove why they should have more or why the other party should have less. So let's say there's domestic violence. You have to prove like domestic violence happened. Talk about it. Put it in the petition. Let's say there is drug addiction. Put it in, let the court know. At that point, that parent will have less time with the children. So that's going back to what is in the best interest of the child.
And with the best interest of the child, is it hard for somebody to lose any rights to the child? I mean, does it have to be very extreme for someone to, not have any access to their children? Like, what's an example of when somebody would lose most of their parental rights or time with the child?
So let's talk about that. A parent will not lose time with the kids. Like, a parent will never, a final judgment cannot be based on zero time sharing. And when I say time sharing, it is overnights. It's not going to happen. That's the law. So the law is, if that is what needs to happen, or because a parent is violent and a drug addict, then they give that parent the key to reestablish the relationship between that parent and the child. For example, go to AA meetings, go to batterers intervention program, do whatever it is for a period of 9 months, 10 months, go back to court, have case management, prove that you did what you're supposed to do, and then there is an increase in the time. So it will never be zero time sharing, because courts cannot do that. But it will be limited until that parent who has issues proves his time. So
I asked that question because you get I'm not going to make sure my wife never sees her kids again. A lot of people going into divorce with this mentality. And really, I think it's important. People need to remember, like, these are your children, right? And this is not about making your wife suffer or you suffer. I mean, at the end of the day, you probably want to look out for your children. And I'm sure once the dust settles and people's emotions go away, hopefully they can come to a reasonable conclusion. And I guess that's probably, do you think that most cases they're amicable and that you see, or are they always pretty heavily contested?
Usually, if there are other issues between mom and dad, if there is infidelity, if there is, someone, domestic violence, if there are other issues going on, usually, it's difficult. The one parent wants to keep the kids from the other parent and what have you. But for the most part, once you sit with someone, explain to them the law and tell them, I can fight for you and I can, go to court and explain to the judge why, the dad or the mom should have, 20% time with the kids. You're going to be wasting your money because I have no evidence, zero evidence to show the court why that parent should have less. So I can do it, but you're wasting your money because it's not going to happen.
So I do want to touch on, I feel like I need to give a disclaimer here. First and foremost, any religious marriage that occurs in the masjid or a mosque here in the United States, it's not a legal marriage.
No.
And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a poor young lady come through my office wishing to assert her right, and she's been a victim of domestic violence, and she believes that the marriage in the mosque is legal marriage. I'm guessing you probably see that, or what can anything be done to correct that? I mean, if that a true marriage never occurred?
No, nothing. It has to be a civil marriage. Without a civil marriage, you're not married, legally speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
But now if you got married in Egypt and it was in a mosque and it's a legal marriage in Egypt and it doesn't go against public policy, then that marriage would be deemed legal here in the United States.
So if they got married at a mosque in Egypt there is not legal marriage. They still have to register it in the court.
Assuming it's legal in that specific country.
Oh,
We
okay. Yes.
marriages for them, those in those specific countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as it's a legal marriage and recognized by that country, and it will be recognized by Florida courts, except if it goes against our public policy.
Okay. And that's the same way for immigration, is that they look to see if the the marriage is legal in the foreign country, we'll consider it as legal here, so long as it doesn't violate public policy. Of course, void marriages don't count, or like any type of polygamy does not work here either, of course. So now we did mention that you wanted to talk about alimony. And I guess there's different categories of alimony and lengths of marriage. And why don't you give us a little bit insight on that?
So let's start by explaining what alimony is. Alimony is, support payments that a party is going to pay the other party to have for support purposes. The way alimony is calculated, and it's not a calculation. It involves, and I'll talk about how we do it, but it's not a calculation. It's not an equation. So it's based on someone's need and someone's ability to cover that need. And when we talk about someone's need, what we go by here in family court is we have the mom or the dad, or the husband or the wife fill out a financial affidavit, stating what their income is, what their expenses are down to the T, and at the end of the month, what their deficit is. Now, let's say their deficit is $5,000. Husband makes $5,000. Is husband going to pay alimony? Nah, probably not. He may, I don't know. I mean, it depends on his income, his expenses, and what is left over. So if he is in the negative, even though mom or the wife is entitled for alimony and she should get alimony, she's not going to get it because that has no ability to pay that amount. So even though someone has the need, doesn't mean that they get it. And that is a big misconception. So let's talk about the duration of the alimony. Alimony kicks in at year 7. So anything less than 7 years, usually, unless there is exceptional circumstances, is not an alimony case. And when I talk about exceptional circumstances, think about someone who is very sick and cannot work there is no way they can work. And husband makes $10,000 and he was married for a year and he doesn't want to be with that person anymore. There is a possibility that that person will get
some of that support and that they need.
Like I said, it has to be exceptional circumstances. Now, when we talk about, there are different types of alimonies. So usually, anything over 7 years is going to be, for example, durational alimony. Durational alimony is going to be anything less than 17 years. So between year 7 and 17. And duration alimony will run for the amount of years that someone was married for. So someone who's married for 10 years will get a maximum of 10 years alimony. Someone who's married for 7.5 years will get a maximum of 7.5 year alimony. Do you always end up with the exact number? No, rarely.
Right, you can always be agreed to through mediation or different numbers, and depending on the party wanting to come to an agreement, the law doesn't necessarily have to be exact on that.
And the courts don't always grant the full amount of years to begin with. Then when we talk about permanent alimony is any marriage that lasted more than 17 years, and it's permanent. It's forever until it is no longer appropriate, and that is when that party gets remarried or is in a supportive relationship.
Now, for a lot of our clients, some of them are going through the immigration process, and I get this question a lot, right? I have a 2-year green card. How's the divorce going to affect my immigration process? So, of course, when you have a 2-year conditional resident card, this is basically you have to demonstrate that you entered the marriage in good faith.
Yes.
And you have to file to remove conditions on a Form 751 and basically show select an option such as I've entered the marriage in good faith, we're still married, we've separated, or I've suffered abuse and domestic violence. So if you are going through an immigration process that's based on marriage, you absolutely need to consult with an immigration lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things is to let people know that they have rights. Like, it's going to be okay. Even if you get divorced, we can still do this, and they're always shocked to hear that. So I'm really happy that, I'm able to give some good news when somebody's going through some difficult time and letting them know that it's going to be okay. Now, for people who are green card holders, can this affect, whether or not they get access to their children? How does the court look at, U.S. citizens, green card holders, and undocumented people? Is there a difference?
Zero difference. No, they cannot discriminate. The court will never discriminate against, an individual because of their status. It will never happen. And our judges, Nayef, are amazing. I mean, they are the most compassionate judges, around. They're just amazing, and that's not going to happen. Now, when we talk about immigration, it could, I see it happens that let's say a parent claims that due to the fact that, husband is on a 2-year, and like you said, restricted visa, conditional, that parent won't be allowed to stay in the country, and therefore will take the kids, abduct them, and disappear. That's an argument,
Yeah.
But then what needs to be proven is that no, that's not going to happen. That that person who is on a conditional green card is rooted within this community, has a job, purchase a house, or in the person, renting a condo, something to show that this person is rooted and has plans to stay in the country and not go back. Stuff like that.
And I think we were talking about this, that we unfortunately see a lot of domestic violence and a lot of nasty divorces in our clients, and sometimes even in our region, Middle Eastern cultures and things like that. And we talk about the issue of domestic violence, but how there's options for people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times victims will stay with their abuser, believing that they have to in order to stay with their children, or they have to, or they're going to be deported from the country, because a lot of times the U.S. citizen petitioner would say, oh, who's going to believe an immigrant like you? You have no papers. No judge would give your children right to live with you. You're undocumented. So I'm happy that you've clarified that, saying that they treat everybody the same. And we need to remember that. And if you're a victim of domestic violence, that you have options in family law, you have options with immigration. Don't let these things hold you back. We are running out of time. I do want to mention that you recently published a book, and if you want to give everybody the title and maybe some background about it.
So my book is called Unintentional Hero, and it took me 10 years to get it, in writing and published. It simply talks about, I walk the reader through what I went through, and how I, getting divorced with no education. I was still in college with 2 children at a very young age. I was like 23, 24, and no family members here. They were all in Dubai. How I was able to make it. It's very difficult, but you can make it. And then another thing I talk about, and this is important for you, Nayef, is that there is no such thing as I will deport you. No one can deport you except INS. No one can deport you except, that's not going to happen. So that was one thing that I was always threatened with. Like, if you report me, I will get you deported in like less than 24 hours.
You see it all the time, the abusers, right? I'm going to call immigration. I'll send you back. And a lot of times it's terrible,
Terrible.
And we talk about it so much on our program because still people do not know they have options. Victims of domestic violence need to know they have options. They have resources.
Yes.
They have places to go. So I commend you on sharing your story, and I hope it inspires others who are going through domestic violence, not only that they can leave, but, thrive, get their law degrees, and, go on to live successful lives. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
And I want to answer one quick immigration question before we go. Somebody asked us a TPS question on dual nationality. And basically, for Venezuelans or Haitians who are dual nationals, you can still qualify for temporary protected status so long as we can demonstrate that prior to your entry in the United States and the majority of your life was in the country that was designated like Haiti or TPS. Now, if you're a dual national of Spain and you spent the last 7 years in Spain, it's going to be hard to try to claim that you don't have a safe place to go where you've spent your life in Spain. So doesn't mean you won't qualify. It does complicate things, but it's still possible. Again, I cannot thank Attorney Arwani from the Arwani Law Firm enough. I hope you all are able to follow her social media pages and visit her website. And here's her email if anybody has any questions for her. And check out her book of Unintentional Hero. And Rania, thank you. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add before we sign off. That 30 minutes flew by.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the evening.
Thanks, Rania. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.